Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch, previously known as the Small Church Podcast. I'm Tony Marr, and with me is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everyone, we're glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and talk about real life stuff of ministry, faith, community, and maybe a little sports and pop culture.
Yeah, if you're expecting a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
We're more about those honest heart-to-heart conversations, like the ones you'd have on the front porch with friends. Sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes we take the scenic route.
That's half the fun, isn't it? Here we tackle the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of church and of life. Every now and then, we'll welcome a few friends to the front porch and share stories and ideas that might just change the way that you see things.
So whether you're a pastor, a church leader, or just someone who loves the church, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. We've got a seat waiting for you.
Robert, welcome back in. It's good to see you again this fine January morning.
Yes, it is a great January morning. I love January. It's going to be awesome.
What do you love about January? NFL playoffs, college football playoffs.
It hits a pretty big month in our life. Melissa and I got married in January, so it's always
All right.
just
When's that happening, or has it already
the
happened?
16th, the wedding or the anniversary. Sorry, the 16th. So it will have happened already, but or it has happened, I should say. I'm always swirling, but yeah, not quite happened yet as we're recording, but almost, and will have happened before the episode drops.
Happy anniversary
Thank you.
to you and your bride. We have two
26.
birthdays in January in this 26 years it's been.
Yeah, it'll
All
be
right.
26 this year. So
You doing something special for that?
chasing 3 boys around, 2 dogs, a cat.
You know, a 26th anniversary only comes around once in your marriage.
It does, and so
I know you don't
we
celebrate
usually
Valentine's Day, and that's coming up soon.
we do not.
Or do you celebrate anniversary?
We do. I mean, we usually. I mean, honestly, like we just try and get out. I mean, as the boys get older, we get a lot more. I mean, you guys know this. I mean, your kids are the same. You're the same phase of life we are. Um, all your kids drive. Things kind of happen and stuff in that way, and so we usually try and get out, grab a cup of coffee, or go grab dinner. We just want to go sit down, chat, hang out, eat some dessert, something like that, and talk about life and just enjoy that journey. So yeah.
We get really deep on the Pulpit and Porch podcast here. There's a lot of theological and philosophical discussions that we have here on the porch. Lola, the show dog, is in great form right outside the window, barking her head off. So
I can't hear her if it makes you feel better.
really, that does make me feel better. But I have a very important question for you that I know that all of our audience members are on the edge of their seat. Maybe pull your car over to the side of the road if you're driving, because this discussion is about to go crazy here. What is your go-to dessert?
Oh, so I found out recently that one of my favorite desserts is no longer available, and so I
That is
love
a
going to Cheddar.
tragedy.
It is. I loved going to Cheddar's and getting their chocolate cake, and I it is no longer there. So we're talking about just going out and getting dessert. That was probably one of my favorite places to go. I don't think most desserts are very, very good. I mean, Cootie Brown's has some good desserts. There's a couple other places that are fine, but a lot of these like coffee shops, their stuff's basically just Sam's Club anymore. Nobody really has in-house bakeries and things like that anymore. Um, I do love the bakery at our church. It's pretty amazing and stuff. But my go-to, if somebody was just doing something, and this is very much me, not Melissa, um, is I love ice cream cake. Like it's hard to go wrong with a good Dairy Queen like ice cream cake from back in the day.
Okay, but are you like the ice cream cake that is simply just ice cream with a crust on it, or do you like that it actually has the cake there and then the ice cream is incorporated within the spongy cake?
Oh, no. I want like the ice cream, like the chocolate with the Oreo and hot fudge, and then just ice cream around it, like built as a all ice cream, like no cake. I love it.
I'm very sad because there was a restaurant that had the most ridiculous, insanely good chocolate cake. And while you've been talking, I've been looking to see where the nearest location of this place would be. And you're going to have to go to Arizona to get the closest place to here. So I don't know how far you want to travel for your anniversary, but
I'm probably good.
I felt like there used to be one in Knoxville. And so I was thinking maybe you'd be up for a little Knoxville trip. That's not that far away. I'm actually looking now for another place for you that has amazing. Oh, and they have one in Tennessee. It is in Knoxville. Mimi's Cafe has phenomenal chocolate cake as well. Before I say that, I probably ought to check their menu and make sure that they still have that.
So, do you know, ironically, one of the best places that I have found recently that, I mean, homemade's of course better, and there's always going to be a niche bakery or something, but a lot of times bakeries don't carry the same thing every day, so you're just kind of hit and miss when you can get it. One of the best spaces I have found is Sam's Club's chocolate cake is absolutely fantastic. They do a good job with their desserts.
Sam's Club does do a good job with their desserts. I'm really sorry, but Mimi's Cafe no longer has the chocolate cake that they used to have.
I think
This
that
is
those desserts got a little bit harder. One, I would assume that like when you take like good chocolate cake, I, I mean it's like 6, 8 inches tall, if not more. I mean, it's a huge, I mean, they're huge, like layers and all this stuff. And I think that's just a lot. And it's actually really hard to keep those fresh and good if you're not baking them there. And as more and more restaurants are going to just shipping things around, it's a lot easier to just do stuff in
So that delay in Robert talking right there, that mental lapse that he just had right there was him looking at his phone because I just texted him
he did text
the
me.
the
It looks
screenshot
tasty.
of
I wouldn't love the nuts on
Claim
the back of it.
Jumper's chocolate motherload cake, which
I wouldn't
if
love
you
the
want to
nuts on the
travel to the
back.
West Coast, you can find that. But it says here it was voted by Food Network as one of the top 5 most decadent desserts in the U.S.
Yeah. And so I think it's hard. I mean, it's easier to ship things like cheesecakes and stuff like that. They probably travel a little better and they keep longer. And so, yeah, you just don't see as many restaurants have good cake. It's easy to take some cookie dough, throw it in a little skillet, make a skillet cookie, and throw some ice cream on top of it and go from there. And so it's just hard to find good chocolate cake. Like I said, Cootie Brown's in our area has some. Mine and Melissa's go-to restaurant. We went on our first date there and then we up until I mean when we first got married we went once a week, and the servers actually knew us and we just kind of cared for them and they cared for us. They knew why we were there, and so they didn't bother us a whole lot. They just show up, drop things off, and we had a pretty good relationship with them. But it's Ruby Tuesdays, and of course most of those are out of business now. I know all the ones in our area are, if not the whole chain, but they had a chocolate tall cake, and Melissa and I have split many of those. They were very, very good.
I'm going to get really
But yeah,
vulnerable with you for a minute.
okay.
That I'm going to open myself up, open my heart to you and all of our listeners.
I'm going to crush it as soon as I can.
I do love an ice cream cake,
Yeah,
but more for the ice cream than the cake. But I do love the combination of the ice cream with the cake. I do love the ice cream cake, but I am much more of a pie person than a cake person.
I love pie. What's your favorite?
My wife makes a chocolate pecan pie that will change your life. I'm also,
Tongue slap your brain out of your head kind of stuff.
yeah. Give me a good apple pie, cherry pie. So most people know Marie Callender's for their frozen food section in the grocery store, all the things that they have there, but there are actual Marie Callender's restaurants, and they have a strawberry pie that is the most fabulous thing you'll ever have. We're talking about this. I'm going to be in Las Vegas in about 5 weeks.
Yeah,
And
you are.
now I've got to go to Claim Jumpers and get their chocolate mother over. I almost said a really bad word, and we almost had to click the profanity explicit content button on our podcast there. The chocolate mother load cake from Claim Jumper while I'm in Vegas. I'm also going to have to go to Marie Callender's and get some strawberry pie. So I'm making a list right now of on top of In-N-Out Burger and Del Taco of the places that I need to visit when I'm in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks.
No, that's that would be awesome. Yeah, I love ice cream. That's probably my go-to dessert. I love ice cream cakes. I like the whole ice cream. Look, I don't mind the other. I do love pie. Pecan pie is probably my favorite. I don't like. I don't love cherry pie. I can eat a blueberry or something, but apple, strawberry, um, chocolate, like a vanilla custard, key lime. Yeah, I'm good on all those.
So good. Now I'm hungry.
Yep,
Hey,
for the
one thing
wrong
that you
thing.
said in our last episode that triggered something for me that I wanted to bring up with you, that we were talking a lot about leadership in our last episode, and you brought up Gerard Mayo, the coach of the New England Patriots,
Oh yeah,
being
the
fired
former
after
coach of the
one season.
Patriots. Yep.
Former coach being fired after one season. Watching Sports Center or some sports talk show. And the big topic of conversation this morning was your GM and owner, Jerry Jones, of your Dallas Cowboys, and the way that he has treated Mike McCarthy, that he had in his post-game press conference just a couple of days ago, really just like 3 days ago. He was asked the question if Mike McCarthy would be open to talking with other teams, and he said, let him talk. Of course, he can have any conversations that he wants. The subsequent day, on Monday, the Chicago Bears asked for permission to interview Mike McCarthy because McCarthy is under contract. His contract with the Dallas Cowboys expires today. It expired today, and the Cowboys have a window for the next 7 days where they're the only team who's allowed to talk and negotiate with him for a new contract on whether or not they want to keep him without their express written consent. And so the Chicago Cubs, I'm already thinking baseball, man. The Chicago Bears asked for permission to talk with McCarthy about their head coaching vacancy. Less than 72 hours after he said in a press conference that let him talk, he denied permission to the Bears to speak with Mike McCarthy, whose contract expired today. He has known that he was on the final year of his contract for the last year. He's actually known that for more than that. But for the last year, he's had the opportunity, if he wanted to bring McCarthy back as his head coach, to sign him to a new contract or even a contract extension. He chose not to do that. And he waits until the day that his contract expires, and he goes into a 7-day negotiating window where they have the sole rights to negotiate without their permission, to deny him the right to go and speak with other teams. He completely seesawed on what he had said just a few days ago. And it comes across as a really childish, really selfish, and really mean-spirited move on his part to tell Mike McCarthy, we're going to wait 7 days until all the job openings are filled before you have the opportunity to go and talk with these other teams. And maybe it's because he's waiting to sign him to a new contract and he wants to keep him as their coach. But I'm wondering your perspective on all of that as a huge Dallas Cowboys fan.
So there's two parts of this. There's the business side of it, and there's ethical and moral things inside of that, and then there's the fan side of it. On some levels, I remember sitting with another buddy of mine who's a Cowboys fan, talking about Romo and then talking about Dak in this season. And, at the end of the day, quarterbacks get all the money and they're the ones who are expected to lead the team, and the loss counts towards them. and the coach, not towards really anybody else. People very rarely go out and go, well, as the starting wide receiver, so and so was, 11 and 22 over a 33 game stretch. And it's like, well, nobody ever says that because it's like he doesn't touch the ball every play and he's not calling the shots. And so, nobody really blames, well, that linebacker, well, they ran opposite of him the entire day. There wasn't much he could do. He held down the fort on his side. And so quarterbacks and coaches on the field catch the most heat. And so I don't know that McCarthy has blown my socks off. And so I'm kind of shocked we're not looking to let him go. The question kind of is, who are you going to get? I mean, in this season, you got Vrabel floating around. I just went blank on the on the Chiefs defensive coordinator. He's a guy that's his name's been around for a couple of years now. I mean, there's a few other people floating around. I mean, a long list of people who've been fired this year. There's probably a couple of college coaches if you really want to take a stab at it and risk some things. But if you're thinking a win now mentality, I don't know that we can go anywhere to someone who has more street cred in working with high end quarterbacks. Dak is not a terrible quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to be a top, 50 player of all time in the quarterback position or anything like that. But he's not a terrible quarterback in the thing. And so from just a fan side, I don't have any huge just kind of connection to McCarthy and why I'd want to keep him or why I'd want him to stay. Um, from like the business side of this, um, like as a photographer who did a lot of photography and stuff, I was really fortunate at one point in time to get connected to the Raiders. And their photographer, his name's Tony Gonzalez. He spent some
He
time
was also an
talking with
incredible
me.
tight end. I didn't know he was a photographer as
uh,
well.
Not the same guy, but yeah, definitely the same name. And this Tony's several years older than that Tony, and
See Ken Griffey
probably a
Jr.'s now doing photography, sports
yes. So
photography.
is Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson's actually a really good photographer. His logo is actually a ball hitting a bird. It's quite funny, but we I remember talking with him one day, and we were just on the phone. We were chatting, and he offered me like a position, but he kind of told me I'd be homeless in 6 weeks. I said, "Well, what's the other options?" And he's like, "You just can't afford to live out here with what I'm paying, and then you're wanting to bring a family with you." He said, "There's no way," but like he was like, "Hey, come work. You can come work with me. I don't mind that." And so I feel really fortunate in that space, but like he um he said, Rob, there's 32 of these jobs on the planet. Like the entire globe, there are 32 people that get to do what I do, what he does. I mean, and I was like, I don't know that I had ever thought about it that way. Like, I guess I just looked at professional jobs and I went, oh, this, and this, and there's this many baseball teams, there's this many this many this. But like, there's 32 people who get to do this. And for Jerry Jones, just kind of ethically, to go, I'm going to hold you back. I'm going to beat you down. I'm going to not let you do this, and this. I like it's insane to me that if we don't sign him, I'm probably not going to stop being a Cowboys fan because I was a Cowboys fan long before Jerry Jones' crazy mind got a hold of the team. But I'm I'm continually frustrated with Jerry Jones, by the way. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you should be in every business on the planet. But I don't know. So those are my two sides. As a fan, I don't have any real love for McCarthy. Don't hate him. I just don't know where we go if we get rid of him, but I'm okay either way in that. As a leader, and stuff, I'm just really turned off and frustrated right now by how that played out because there are only so many jobs. He is a good coach. It might just not be the best system. I mean, you think about the fact if Tom Brady had been drafted anywhere else other than New England, does he become Tom Brady? I don't know, maybe. But there was a lot with Belichick that made that happen. And that's the thing is sometimes Pat Mahomes, incredibly athletic. But if he doesn't go to the Chiefs and then, oh my goodness, the Walrus. How can I forget their coaches? I can't remember any of the Chiefs coaches' names
Andy
right now.
Reid.
Thank you. If Reed hadn't gotten fired by the Eagles and then, or Jet Eagles, yeah, and then picked up by them, like, would he have been the guy he is had it not been for Andy Reid and the staff that he had put around him? And I think you can always ask those questions. There's people who show talent. Tom Brady was, what, seventh round pick or something. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't like he was sitting there going number one overall, going, "Oh man, this is Matthew Stafford. He's going to have this incredibly high ceiling," and then just doesn't quite pan out. Um, so I think you're a USC fan as well as UNLV and just those West Coast teams and stuff. And I mean, same thing. Matt Leinart. I mean, incredible career in college, just never panned out in the NFL. But if he'd have gone and been Brady's backup, would he have turned into something better? And I just think sometimes I think Baker Mayfield shows us the system can sometimes determine the outcome. As he's bounced to a couple of teams, he's not a terrible quarterback. I still don't think he's as elite as he thinks he is, but it takes that level of confidence to succeed at that high level of play. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I rambled a little bit, but
No, I think
I'm
that's
just
great. I
struggling.
think there's a lot of great leadership lessons in what we're seeing out of this. And first off, I'll say Jerry has the right to do whatever he wants.
Yep. He owns the team, his beach, his ocean.
Exactly. And people give him such a hard time every year ad nauseum on ESPN and Fox Sports and all the different networks on how he needs to
They literally
relinquish
say
being
he
GM.
does this stuff to stay in the news. I mean, they're
Yeah.
like, he finds these little piddly things that most organizations would go, "This is insane. I would never do this." And it would be like, "Oh, the Green Bay Packers gave Matt LaFleur a chance to go and interview with, the Arizona Cardinals." And people be like, "Oh, hey, what's that look like?" Blah, blah, blah. And in 4 hours, it's totally not news anymore. Jerry makes a crazy statement one day, knowing that 3 days later, he's going to make the exact opposite statement. Just like he's like, I paid, people are asking questions about Dak. And it's like I paid him how much more commitment can I show? And it's just like, he is brilliant, but he's ruining one of I would say this, I mean, the wrong ownership for the Dodgers, they could ruin one of the best franchises in baseball with
Well,
poor ownership.
1990s and 2000s, we saw that until the
True.
Guggenheim Group brought him. Most of my adulthood, we were basement dwellers of the NL West.
That's true. And so you understand that. And so I don't wish anything bad for Jerry, but unfortunately, this is going to transition to his son. And
And
unless
I'm
his
living
son
that exact
develops,
thing right now with the Lakers, that Jerry Buss,
yes, you
maybe one
are.
of the greatest owners in the history of sports and what he did for that franchise, and then turns it over to Jenny Buss, is really running it now. And nothing has happened since Dr. Buss passed away and lost his
Yeah.
influence over the team. And so, yeah, I think that it's going to be a long road for you as a Cowboys fan. But I think that it goes beyond
But I got some
sports
wins.
you did a long time ago. It goes beyond
That's more than some
sports
fans.
into very true.
Every team I pull for has won in my lifetime. There are a lot of sports fans who can't say that.
Very
And
true.
so Cowboys, Braves, Alabama, Celtics, I mean, all of those teams have won well. I mean, really dominant seasons and stretches of life. And so getting to celebrate those things are a ton of fun, and that's not something everybody can do. If you're a Jets fan, I mean, you could be like 90 years old and still not have a championship or something. So
One of the reasons that we call this show the Pulpit and Porch, and we changed it from the Small Church Podcast, is for this very reason. In fact, we even say in our intro that we're going to spend some time talking about sports and pop culture almost every single week. And so I don't apologize for the fact that we spent the first 24 minutes of this show talking about sports. In fact, I love it. I've enjoyed it a lot, but we probably should transition into something a little bit more ministry related, even though this conversation, I think, does have a lot of great leadership insights and leadership lessons that we can learn from them. Last week, we started a discussion, Robert, and it really wasn't a discussion. It was more of an interview that I was having, interviewing you on things that we can learn in reflecting back and looking back on the last year. And last week, we spent our time talking about what are some of those things that we can learn from the last year. What are wins that we can identify from the last year? What were challenges that we can identify, specific challenges, and what are the lessons that we can learn from those, and how can celebrating those wins really challenge and deepen our faith and our leadership, and the lessons that we learn from the conflicts and the challenges. This week, I want to kind of turn the page onto how we can take those things. And we gave, at the end of our show last week, we gave our listeners a little bit of homework. Maybe the first time in the history of our show that we've given some homework and some guided direction on personal reflection and questions that they can answer, and some time that they can spend away from the show in reflecting on some things and giving some introspective looks into their past year. Now we want to kind of turn the page and change that into how we can look at those things, how we can take those lessons that we learned last week, those memories and ideas that resurfaced last week, and see how they can help us to prepare and plan for the year ahead. Because reflection isn't just about looking backwards. Reflection is also about allowing God to shape our lives and our path going forward. And so we want to spend some time today on this episode, not just talking about sports, but talking about the year ahead in 2025, and how the lessons that we learned in 2024 can help us to prepare and plan for 2025.
Yeah. Let's do it, man. Get to it. Get to those questions.
All right. So we talked last week about the lessons learned in the past year, and talking about some of those things that you talked about last week. How do those lessons from the past year change how you're going to approach 2025 coming forward?
Yeah. I think one of the things for me, and this is going to sound crazy simple, but I just think sometimes, I mean, that's the best answers a lot of times are the simple ones to the things that we're doing. And I was just really reminded towards the end of this year, like we don't really know like what tomorrow holds, what's going to happen. People that are in our life one day may be out of it another. I mean, we live in a world where it's super easy for life and things to change. And while it can feel, um, super frustrating when people or a situation or a moment um, can switch on you or change, and sometimes it's expected, sometimes it's not. Um, just really kind of going, there might be some good. Um, there's still going to be some hard, but trusting God that He's working all things for our good, and moving in that space is probably the thing that I'm really kind of, I guess, kind of clinging to and seeing from the end of the year and moving into this year with.
What do you think? How has those lessons prepared you for what's happening in the future?
I mean, I guess in the space of what I'm talking about, I mean, I mean, when you're going, man, you don't know what tomorrow holds. And so, living in, I mean, trying to really, really sit in today. I'm not a big fan unfortunately, I mean, I think a lot of us get stressed about the past, but I'm not a big fan of just like living in the past and like, let's fix it and move forward. But, I can get hung up there a little bit with certain things, and I think a couple of leadership things are some of those that I can do that with, and so I think that when you start thinking about, man, how do you live today? How do you live with the end in mind, but not worrying about um, what might change, but the gospel end of loving God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, your neighbors, yourself, going and making disciples. When you live at that end in mind, um, it definitely changes. You're not as consumed with with the stuff that goes on um, the next day. So it's helped me to really look at the moment and live in that and take care of the things that are there and not worry about what might happen if a certain church member leaves, or what might happen if this person really changes their role or something like that. So
You've talked in the last couple of weeks several times on episodes about some of the goals that you've set for 2024. I think you even specifically said that you had 4 goals for your church, 8 goals for yourself personally. Would you mind taking a minute and maybe sharing some of those? There might be some that you're not comfortable sharing in front of 2,000 people, but would love to hear if there is anything that you are willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I don't mind sharing both of those things, and we can even talk about a little bit where I'm at in this moment. Um, we have I mean, I think everybody does a discipleship system that you kind of work through, and it had kind of not the mentality of it, just the execution of it had kind of fallen off a little bit. And so, as far as my 4 church goals, um, very intentional in who I'm spending some time with, some key leaders who are people who are disciples making disciples, and I want to go and I want to spend time with them and I want to sit with them and journey with them. And sometimes there's people who just sit really well with people, but they struggle sometimes of how to have good spiritual conversations without taking a Bible and smacking somebody in the face or something like that. And so I want to be able to kind of journey that. We Years and years and years ago ran across a guy named Nelson Searcy. He has these 8 systems of leadership and stuff, and I've functioned in those, and I've seen, as I was just reflecting at the end of the year, um, just see some gaps, and so I'm spending 30 minutes a day on a system, and so that means every 2 weeks I will cover all 8 systems, and and then that, and and if you do that every 2 weeks, that's twice in a 4 week stretch times 13. And so I'll cover each system 26 times. I'm reading some books inside of that. I'm working through some systems that we already have in place as a church and a network. I'm sitting with some other leaders inside of those things, in those moments. And so work through that. Something that we used to do, and some rhythm just got out of that coming out of summer, is a VIP service where we're in one service. We have people who they don't get to attend church. I mean, so if we can't really function on a Sunday morning without people in children's ministry. There's just things that people are going to be in security. People are going to have roles that don't allow them to sit in the service, or maybe their role is so busy during the service that they don't get to focus as much on what's they're making sure the slides are working, or that the media is happening right, or the live stream and all that stuff, and they're doing all their job and they'll get to focus. And so we do this VIP, just about 5 to 6 minutes, where we just talk through what the day's going to be, what's a win for us that day, and typically whoever's speaking shares just in a minute and a half. Hey, here's 3 things that God's put on my heart. We're going to share today, and they get kind of a glimpse at the sermon. And then part of our change this year with some things is evaluating and restaffing some key positions. And I I want to um like twice a month I want to sit down with somebody in the church that has shown interest, shown potential as a leader in that space, take them to grab a coffee, grab lunch, something like that, and just sit with them, and and just get to know their story a little more, see if there's things that ways they can plug in and serve at a higher level, and really help achieve what I think for them is a great step, but also help just solidify some areas of ministry and stuff that we've got going on. So, and then there's action steps for each of those that I have to do, and stuff as well. So
Do you follow
personally,
the
go ahead.
GPS model? Goals, priorities, strategies?
Um, um, Somewhat. I was trying to think. I don't even remember the name of the book, and honestly, I don't know that I've even read it. Northridge follows some 4 goal system thing, and stuff, and so I typically set a goal, put a couple of actionable steps to go with it, and and then just kind of walk through in the church world. Personally, it's a little different for me, um, but but yeah, those are kind of where I'm at
What I
with
love
church.
about that is so often we tend to set goals for ourselves, for our organization. You know, if it's 4 for the organization, 8 for yourself, 8 for the organization, 4 for ourselves, you know, whatever it is, we tend to set these goals, but then we don't have any strategy in place for how we're going to accomplish those goals. And when you have something like 12 goals for your life going into this next year, how do you prioritize those, and do they need
Yeah.
to be accomplished in a way that one feeds into another, one helps another, one can't be done without one preceding it, you know? And so I enjoy that framework because I think it helps you to realize, okay, we've got the goals, but what's the priority in these goals? How do we line them out to where they're not just floating around somewhere, but we actually have them? And then what's our strategy for making sure that we ensure these? We talk a lot on the show about mission, vision, and values within the concept of our picture frame that we use in our consulting. And one of the main components of that, one of the main sides of that frame, is the strategy. That so often we have so many churches, I would say almost every church has a mission statement or a vision statement out there, but how many have a strategy clearly defined and articulated on how they're going to accomplish that mission? And I think we can do the same thing with the goals that we set for ourselves. And so I love hearing that you have, with each of your goals, that you've identified actionable steps to help you accomplish those goals.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, and it's definitely been a growth process in different levels of leadership and stuff. But yeah, I'm excited about that church this year. Personally, it's a little bit different. A couple of them aren't anything like I just want to be sure that I don't start to put a bunch of stuff. So when I say I have 10, like I probably only have like 3 that are things that are not things that I'm already doing, but I just want to keep some of these, uh, like praying every day is something I do. But in a world where I'm listening to Dallas Willard and listening to John Mark Comer and those types of voices, I want to take some steps and grow in that area. And so I want to be intentional about what does it mean? What does it look like to have a healthier life of communicating to the Father and their like I am reading scripture, but what does it mean to really read and reflect at a more intimate level with scripture, and how do I navigate and do that? I miss being creative, and so there's 3 times a week I want to design something small, um, just something that I could be creative with and do, just kind of keep pushing those graphically, not anything like real get out and cut wood kind of stuff right now, but like graphically
If you
designing
want to
some
cut wood,
things.
I've got a whole bunch of trees that you can come and take down here if you need to get that fix, that artistic fix
That
of
fix,
cutting wood.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not so much the demo as I like creating, and so that seems to head the wrong direction for me.
But
But
you're creating open spaces. You're
wide
creating
open spaces,
you're
yeah,
you're creating views that can take place. And so
yeah,
really the artistic reach is limitless with this
is so
project here.
far, so far. Um, I want to read a chapter a day. In a book, and I like it's not any crazy goal. If I did that, I would probably get about 10 more books than I read last year. I probably sat, or not probably, sorry, I sat at about a book every other to every 3 weeks last year, and so I I got about 20 books in last year, which isn't terrible, but I'd like to be more in if I read like that, I could read a book easily every 2 weeks. Um, but there's a lot of things I could accomplish because I have to read other stuff on top of that. So I'm reading personally in that. It just kind of gets me there. Um, I don't like you and I are very different when it comes to exercising, working out, and things. Um, that is not something that was a real priority in my family's life, and it's been something I've struggled with my whole life. And so I'm working to do at least 15 minutes every day. If that's getting out and taking a walk, if that's just jumping on Apple TV and letting, doing some, P90X type 15-minute trainer workout or something like that.
I
Um,
thought you were going to say working out your fingers with the remote there on Apple
no,
TV.
no, no. Yeah, that's one that I do well. The other ones I struggle with. And then I've got a couple of writing goals. Um, I want to be a little more intentional about texting people that I care about. Um, I want to learn Spanish a little more. We just seem to be running into more and more and more people in our life where being a little bit more fluid in Spanish. I'm not at all. I'm barely broken conversational. Definitely not anything that's worthwhile. Like I feel like I don't know 10 words
No
most of the
habla
time.
español.
So
Muy poquito habla español.
see. But it's not anything great. And so just trying to work through some things there. Melissa's on that journey with me. And so we're holding each other accountable and trying to work through that a little bit. Basically what I did is I deleted games off my phone. And if I was going to play a game, I do Duolingo. And so it's just an easy way to shift the thinking of one idea to move it to another, wasted time to energy. The most important goal I have, I shouldn't say the most important goal, praying and reading scripture, probably the most important, but like number three for me, the most important goal I have this year that would be a real goal. It's one of those three things. It's not something I was already doing daily, is I want to leverage 15 minutes with a family member daily. And I would prefer that to be just me and them, like, trip to a music store, um, I don't get to drive my kids to practice anymore, so I lose a lot of time there. I used to get a ton of time, and I'm personally starting to feel that. I don't have a bad relationship with my kids. I love them. They love me, most days. And, we journey life really, really well together. And I am thankful for that. But I just want to be a little more intentional about what does it mean to get 10 or 15 minutes every day where I just kind of get to go, hey, where you at? How you doing? And then we tried to do it twice a month. I think it's going to have to land out just because everybody's schedule. Once a month, on a Saturday morning, I just want to get my boys and we're going to do breakfast somewhere. And
All
just
of
the
them
four of us
together
go.
or individually?
Yeah, 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 all four of us. Um, I'll get some time individually. Like I always end up with time individually. I- I'm I'm parenting for the long game in that moment. My boys are really close, and I'm thankful for that. And we always say our boys could hate each other because we have families all the time go, man, our kids fight all the time, and our boys do have disagreements. They don't always get along, but they really do care for each other. And I'm parenting for the long game in that of when they get out of the house and when they get married and when they have kids, that they still value that. There's going to come a point in time that they're going to be where I'm at right now. And parents are gone, just you and your siblings, and what you create today will shape how you execute that tomorrow. And so I just want to be able to speak a little bit intentionally around some things. We got into a funny conversation the other day. At one point in time, Melissa, we actually, when we were at your house the other day, we were laughing about this type of stuff, and we talked about like you've got a very blended house as far as like boys and girls. It's around the table, and it's all boys except for Melissa, and so sometimes things come up, and we try and rein it in. The other day, it did not get reined in, and it kind of it was hilarious and it was funny, but Melissa at one point in time just had her head on the table, and every one of the boys was just crying, laughing, and I was just like, I don't know how you win here. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and like I think that one of the things that I was really impacted by, I was sitting with a friend this past year, and we were just talking about being discipled that makes disciples, and who are the people you're having spiritual conversations with. And it's so hard sometimes because you're just going, man, I'm talking to the dude at Kroger every time I go in there. I'm talking to the guy once every 3 months when I go and get my oil changed in the car. I talk to the person at, this place, and occasionally you get somewhere it's there. But the biggest influence you've got are the people who sit around your house. And the people that you're really like every day they wake up, they don't have anywhere else to go. And so I value the relationship with my kids because I want to have that, but I also I want to be continuing those conversations and chatting about things in that world with them.
Yeah, it's amazing how someone who spends their life in a certain area, right, and then coaches and guides people in a certain area misses it in their own life so often. And you sitting there talking about that, I was a single dad for 5 years with my kids. And when I was a single dad for that 5 years, I had a date night with each kid each week. And it wasn't, we didn't go anywhere. It was when at bedtime, two of the kids would go to bed. One of them got to stay up late with dad, and they each had a night, and we would do whatever they wanted. It was sit down and play video games sometime. It was get in the hot tub. It was go for a walk. It was sit down and do a puzzle, or just sit and get ice cream. And one of my kids, it was almost always sitting and watching a basketball game. He got to stay up late, and so we'd watch baseball or basketball or something like that and talk about that. Another one, it was almost always, let's get ice cream or cake or something for our date tonight, and we'd just sit in the kitchen and eat a bowl of ice cream and talk about life. And then when Amanda and I got married, we blended our families together, and there were 7 kids, and I didn't feel like I could do it with my 3 and not incorporate her 4 into that. And so then it was like, plus we've now got all these schedules of 7 kids that are keeping us going crazy. Plus I've got my wife who I have to have a date night with, and you can do the math. 7 + 1 is 8. There's not that many nights in the week to do this. And so it was something that honestly went away. And, I will occasionally take the kids on a date, and we'll go out one-on-one and do that kind of thing. But you saying that made me realize how much I miss that time that I knew every week I had a dedicated hour and a half. That was our time frame, hour and a half, that you got to stay up late past your bedtime for an hour and a half to have a date with dad. And we did that for 5 years. And my oldest daughter, only had a year of not having that. But the other 2, they probably don't remember date with dad as well. And I've got 1.5 years left with the boys that are here in the house. And you kind of inspired me with your talk there to look at redoing that. Another thing that I want to touch on really quick before we move on, because this is about me talking to you, not me talking about myself, is something that you said on Sunday at church in your teaching really impacted me and really stepped on my toes a little bit. And I do a daily Bible study in some form or fashion most days of the week. And I would probably say the days that I sit down and work at my office, it happens. My Bible is sitting right here, and it's open, and I'm working through stuff. And I've done the read through the Bible in a year 3 or 4 times over the course of my life and adulthood. But it's been a while. It's been a while since I've done that. I get the daily verse of the day that pops up as a notification on my phone, and I make a point to stop and read that and click on it and read the whole thing every single day. And we've talked about this before, I get a notification every single day that says, here's a reminder to pray today. And no matter what I'm doing, if I'm driving, I will pray and spend some time in that. And so I have these things that I do, but I haven't had a specific study plan in quite a while. And you've been encouraging the people at your church to go through this year-long program of reading through the New Testament and using an app to do that. And it's pretty simple, and there's not a lot of time. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking that that's something that I would really love to do, something that I would really like to do. And I began thinking about my day. And there are things that I do every single day. And I'm embarrassed to even say this on air where it's going to live forever in cyberspace. But every single day I play the daily game of solitaire because there's a streak going. And you try to do it in under 2 minutes. And some days I get it in under 2 minutes. Other days it takes me 4 or 5 minutes to figure it out. But I've got a streak of like 640 days that I've beat this game of solitaire. I play Monopoly Go on my phone every single day because there are daily things that you need to do to advance in the game. Every single day, I don't miss. Probably 2 years, I haven't missed a single day of playing Monopoly Go. I check Bleacher Report every single day, multiple times a day. I check my fantasy sports team every single day, especially in the baseball season. Every single day, I'm setting my roster and spending at least, 3, 4, 5 minutes of doing that every day. So I've got all of these different things that I place a priority on that happen every day when I could spend a dedicated amount of time through an app on my phone that's already in my hand for multiple hours a day, or it's in my pocket for all of my day, to pull out and spend some time in the Word of God. And so why is that not as much of a priority as fantasy football or solitaire? So that was something that I was really convicted about in listening to you this weekend and listening to you talk right now, that I think is very simple, and yet I think can have a profound, deep, meaningful impact on our lives.
And I've been in that space. I mean, like I like there's this there, and I go through some seasons, and um, like I was talking to somebody, and they're like, I read it every year. Like I read through the Bible every year, and I'm like, good for you. Um, like I went through a season where the verse of the day was about all I could handle. Um, it was, I mean, I just needed something that was small to digest, something I could grab a hold of and talk through with the Father, that I could talk through with my spouse, that I could talk through with people, that I could reflect in a verse and go, how is that really kind of navigating and working with me? Um, and then I um, I went through a season where I was just reading a psalm, and I read a psalm every day, and I was working through them, and I would reflect and I would look at the words, and and then I went through a season where like I was reading like through the Bible, and it was a little heavier clip, and I was literally taking and copying every verse from YouVersion, dropping it into my notes on Apple Notes, and then by chapter, and then I would just read through it, and then I would hit enter. Had no verses, no verse numbers. I was just reading solid text, no verse numbers. I would hit enter, and I'd put a little indent, and I would be like, here's a question I have. Here's a thought I've got. Here's something I don't understand. Here's something I want to know. And it's those things that like in the seasons of life that have been different. Right now, I'm probably as healthy as I've been in that space in a while. Um, but I think some of that too is because there's a real intentionalness about why I'm reading, and those things are very personal for me. In my relationship with the Father, they're very personal in how I lead my family, and very personal in how I lead the church and make disciples in the community. And so, no, man, I'm with you 100%. And it was not a challenge I wanted to step into because I don't like getting into things that I feel. You talked about not liking the snow day, like snow makes you feel trapped. I think sometimes when I step into things like that, that everybody's doing the same thing, I just feel trapped. And I'm going like, I don't want to be, if I need a break from this, I want to be able to stop. And I want to be able to hit pause, and now I can't. And that's something that's different for me.
Robert, how do you balance setting the goals that you have for yourself and for your ministry with being open to where God may lead?
I have probably had this conversation with my kids more recently, especially one of them, than anything. I cannot stress enough to them, and what I say to myself is, man, I just hold things loosely. Um, I try and like I make plans. I set things up. I go through that, but I really just try and hold those things loosely in a way that allows me to kind of be sensitive to the spirit. And that's an easy thing to like rattle off, but it's actually kind of a hard thing to comprehend. What does it look like to go, okay, I am going to go on a year and a half journey of showing up every 7 days and recording a podcast for about 2 hours, not counting the other work that goes in. And then what does it look like to hold that loosely to go, there may come a day that God says no, and that comes and you and I would both say at that point that we're nowhere close to that at this point. There's nothing in our hearts. It's actually quite the opposite. We seem to be leaning deeper in to things. But like for me, like it's very hard. Like there's non-negotiables. My family's not that's not something I'm holding loosely. I'm holding on tightly to loving and caring for them. What I do have to hold on to loosely is the steps they take. I can help guide from a distance, but I cannot force them down a path. Um, they get to make their own choices. They have free will just like I do. And and so I think in my goals, I'm growing to do that same thing. Um, and I think this is such a hard thing. And like I said, I was listening to Ben Stewart, and I don't know that I'll say all of this, but some of these things I was going to say. But he was teaching John 21 and just Jesus after he is resurrected, and he's standing on the beach side there, and he looks out to the guys in the water, and he tells them to come back in, and it wasn't this like he said this thing and it was just so impactful as I was listening to it. Um, because we're talking about obedience this week, and you think about Peter has just denied the Father three or denied Jesus 3 times, and he's in this space and he's there, and Jesus says, toss your nets on the other side, come back in. And he said, how do you know how Jesus would handle something and how we should? And the tension came in is that Jesus said, do you love me? And Peter's like, yes. He's like, then feed my sheep. He said, the reason that we approach things so wrong so many times with how we come at others and come at life is we go, Jesus wasn't calling him out on his sin. And he went through a whole thing of the coal fire and all this stuff that really kind of shows, hey, there's these two spaces where he really is. And I know you know all of that, but, he never looked at Peter's past. He was saying, if you love me, let's look forward and let's move forward in that space. And I think that that's the thing, is that we hold on to things too tightly when it comes to goals and plans and dreams and stuff, because we're looking at the past and we're either seeing past successes that we want to recreate, or we're seeing past failures that we never want to see happen again. So we put a death grip on something and we go, if I hold this tight enough, I can steer the ship correctly. And what God's calling us to do is to plan, to do our part. Faith without works is dead. Do the work, but don't do the work to a point that you're unwilling to be sensitive to the Spirit leading.
Man, that was good stuff. Preach it, brother.
Those are the things that sit in my life right now. I've said this to the church. I think I said it here. I want us to read, as a church, I want to read through the New Testament. As a church, I want us to focus on, Matthew 28, making disciples, sharing our God story with people. And then I'm just really strongly burdened right now because I know the weight in my life throughout the years of Matthew 11, 1 John 5:3, like the yoke is easy, the burden is light, like carrying that. How do we walk with the Father, and not that we're ignoring our sin, but how do we confess and move forward the way that Jesus did with Peter? And I think the tension that so many followers of Jesus are facing right now is we're too busy holding on and sitting under the weight of what we're doing. And Jesus said, but my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Why are you so weighed down? And so I'm just in this space of I want to lead into a world of freedom in Christ this year, of taking that freedom and investing that into the lives of others, the hope that comes through freedom in Christ. And I believe those things only come as we understand the scriptures, and we can't do that if we're not reading them. And so anyway, that's really been the last two probably close to 3 months now, but the last 2 months of 2024, guys just beating me to death with those. Every book I picked up was that. Every podcast I listened to drove towards that at some point in time. And then just people speaking into my life. Conversations with you would say something, and I'm going, he doesn't even know about that. And it was just those types of things. People would ask questions, things would go, and I'm like, for me, it's just a really clear path. I'm holding it loosely, but it's hard to go wrong teaching people the Bible. But at the same time, that's just kind of where I'm at. So yeah,
Love it. Couple of quick things, and then we've got to jump off of here. We've been going at
yeah, we
this for
do.
a while. A couple of quick things that I want to say. You said, you touched on this in your last little bit that you were just saying on trying not to look back or dwell on holding on to the past. But our whole last two episodes have been about the power in reflection. And so while I agree with you completely on not holding on to the past, I do think that we can learn incredible lessons from reflecting on the past.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that it's beneficial, impactful, and powerful to let the lessons and successes that we've had from our past inform our goals for the future.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing that I want to say that is something that I'm really focusing on for myself this year. We've done a whole episode last year, I think, on don't set resolutions, set covenants, that there's a big difference between a resolution, which is a promise that you make to yourself, and it's easy to break a promise that you make to yourself, and a covenant, which is a promise that you make with someone else, that you make to someone else. One of the big things that I'm trying to focus on this year is to set intentions, not just goals. That instead of focusing on what I want to achieve, trying to focus on who I want to be. Some of my goals directly correlate with who I want to be as a follower of Jesus, who I want to be as a man, who I want to be as a dad, who I want to be as a husband, who I want to be as a friend. But I want to encourage our listeners, as maybe you're already got all of your goals set for the year, maybe you're still in the process of looking at that, is to set intentions, not just goals. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be as a person at the end of 2025? Who do you want to be at the end of January? Who do you want to be halfway through the year? Not just what do you want to accomplish, what do you want to achieve, but who do you actually want to be?
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things kind of where you challenged me a minute ago with some stuff. I think that in that the step really kind of is like, okay, once you get to that point, and this is where it starts to feel like work and it starts to feel like things, but like I think it's Andy Stanley that said direction, not intention, determines destination. I think intentions are so good. And I know what you mean by that. I'm just thinking through that word, but like when you set that intention and you can move into that space, how then do you move forward? And like you were asking me a minute ago, like, oh, is it GPS? Is this? What's the steps you take to move towards that space? And love that. See, because I know you're like goal obsessive almost at times, and like you're so intentional about the things you do and who you're wanting to become and how you want to be faithful in that and how you want to live that. And I just wonder how do you help everyone around you in that space kind of move in that same intention um, with when they set those kind of dreams and ideals and intentions of who they want to be as a person.
I think that's something internal that everyone has to discover for themselves. And it's something that I'm still discovering, because you're exactly right. And for the vast majority of my life, it's all been goal driven on things that I wanted to accomplish and things that I wanted to achieve. And I found myself at a place at 45 years old of saying, I've really accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish. I've really achieved everything that I set out to achieve. I had a list of things that I wanted to do. And I can remember that I had this list of all of these things that I wanted to do, that I wanted to achieve, and I wanted to accomplish. And one of the last ones of those was I wanted to become a black belt in a martial arts. And so a year and a half ago, when I got my black belt and I'm sitting at the tea ceremony, which for martial arts people, you'll know what that means. And it's happening. And I'm like, okay, I've accomplished this. Now what? And it was like, okay, I did this, check it off the list. Now what? Now what's next? And just going from goal to goal to goal, from accomplishment to accomplishment to accomplishment. But who am I as a person? Who am I, like I said, as a husband? Who am I as a father? Who am I as a friend? Who am I as a son? Who am I as a brother? And while I've accomplished so many of the goals in life that I set out to achieve and accomplish, I don't know. I know it's not. I don't know. I know that I'm not happy with who I am as a person. There's still work to be done on me as a human being, as a representative of Jesus, as a dad, as a husband. There's still a lot of work to be done in me, and so I've really been challenged by that shifting my focus from what I want to accomplish, regardless of the cost, to who do I really want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of friend do I want to be? And that's not something that you can say, all right, do this, because that answer is different for me than it is for you. If you say, I want to set out to accomplish to write a book this year, there are steps that we can take. There are goals that we can take for that. But if you say, I want to be something internal that is a character issue, that is a DNA of who you are, that's something I can't tell you that. I can't tell you, here's who you need to be. Sure, there are things that we need to look more like Jesus, and we have the example of Christ to follow. But sitting down with someone saying, here's who you need to be. When I'm sitting with a church leader, there are things that I can say, okay, for you to be effective as a pastor or a leader or in this role, here are things that you should be doing. I can't tell you who you need to be. Those are things that you need to self-identify and self-reflect on. And then once you've identified those and say, this is who I want to be, then we can work through, all right, here's some steps that you can take. But that internal reflection is something that has to happen individually with the help
I
of the
think
Holy
that's
Spirit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's two parts to that. I think that one is definitely the work of the Holy Spirit, and it would definitely, as much as you love the next person I'm about to mention, um, the work of the Holy Spirit, but also like I think your dad is the type of person that people need to be sitting with in that moment as well. Like somebody who's a counselor that can help them start to understand a little bit more of where they are internally. I think God's gifted. I don't know that I'm gifted at that. I mean, like what I tend to do with my boys is they talk about interests and ideas and passions and stuff like that. I'm like legal, ethical, moral, biblical. Is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it biblical? If it is, go for it. I heard, I think Louis or somebody was talking this week at Passion, and they were just like, you're sitting in a situation, you're going Georgia Tech or Stanford. Do I go to Georgia? Do I go to Stanford? And like, it's like, I, I don't know that God really cares.
Yeah, the thing I
Like,
always say to
I'm
that is
not,
God's will is not rational, it's relational.
and that's the whole thing is like, I don't like and then one of my kids, we have deep conversations around this, almost arguments over like, I don't know that God cares if you're a CEO or, um, like building houses or moving rock, digging ditches. I don't know that God cares. Or do you love God? You love others? Or are you making disciples? In that, I think God's given all of us gifts, talents, skills, and abilities. And if we're not leveraging what He's given us to make a difference, and that might mean you are a landscaper during the week because God gave you a really good job, and on the weekends, at night, you're out teaching people how to play guitar. You're playing on stage on Sunday. Maybe you're really good at music, but it just wasn't a way that you wanted to make a living. And I think biblically, we have a responsibility to provide for our family. Um, and so I think that in that space, I think there's a lot of good conversations there. But
But
yeah,
unfortunately, this conversation
there,
needs to come to an end.
it does. And so there's a lot of things there. And so, I mean, I know that like, man, we've got so much stuff and, um, I'll say this and I'll let you close this out. I think as you reflect on last year, like you said, it's important to reflect. Um, don't kill yourself over. Don't get so hung up on the past that you can't move forward. See the things where you were there, um, and like trusting the God that like he's going to that he's going to be he was working in that moment, and I think just being reminded of God's faithfulness And that in a moment where he saw our sin, he saw our junk, he saw our stuff, he knew our shortcomings, he knew our flaws, he still sent his son to die for us. And that he loves us. And even Jesus in the greatest of moments, when he could have just said, Peter, you were an idiot, man, depart from me. I don't know you, just like you denied me. He chose to say, then let's look forward. Let's look at something that's more here. And so, yes, reflect in the past, reflect in, see the things, get better, but don't get so beat up in the past that you forget that God is still writing your story, and that you've got a future. To quote a Bethel song, maybe you like Bethel, don't, but you got a future. It's worth the living, and God's still doing some cool things.
Yeah, great word, great stuff there. I'm reminded of a book, and I don't remember which one it was that I read. You might know right off the top of your head, but it said, "Don't dwell on the past and don't dwell on the future. Live in the present." There's some great insight into that. Well, I also think that it's important that we reflect on the past and we plan for the future so that we can effectively live in the present. And that is all the time that we have for this edition of the Pulpit and Porch podcast. I hope that you have enjoyed journeying with us on this discussion the last couple of weeks on reflecting on 2024 and looking ahead to 2025, seeing the lessons that we can learn from our past on how they can shape and give us insight into what's coming in the future. I want to really thank my co-host, Robert Kell, for opening up over these last couple of episodes, going down some roads that we don't normally travel. And I want to thank you for participating with us on that. We want to invite you to continue participating with us as you join the conversation through chiming in through our website, higherministries.com, or joining us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, on Higher Ministries or the Pulpit and Porch, and you can be a part of this conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts, hear your insights. Again, we want to encourage you to share, to like, to follow the Pulpit and Porch podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We're excited for what's to come for your 2025 and for our 2025. And until next time, grab your cup of sweet tea and we'll see you on the porch.